This week's sermon with Jim Nave.
But everything that God does is based on his nature. It's really important for us to understand. The church as a whole wouldn't have some of the doctrinal beliefs we have if we understood the nature of God. We wouldn't believe some of the things about God we believe if we understood that everything flowed from his nature, right? Then we can have a reference. That's the foundation we need to look at, is the nature of God, right? Everything is based on that, so we have to know what his nature is. Well, the essence of his nature, we've all come to the conclusion of, I hope, is love. All right, so we're starting a new series called A Firm Foundation, and we're going to start off by talking about God's unconditional love, because that's the foundation of everything, right? Everything is based on the love of God. And I just want to remind us of one thing that has helped me so much. So if you're taking notes, you probably have this in a lot of your notes, but I'm gonna keep teaching us these things, because it's a foundational truth that could help us to stay in the right thinking about God. And it's this: all of God's plans flow from his nature, and all of his promises are backed by his nature. So I'm going to say it again. All of God's plans flow from his nature, and all of his promises are backed by his nature. So we looked at all these redemptive promises for 10 weeks. Did you notice that every one of those redemptive promises has a name attached to it? Every one of my promises is backed by my nature. But everything that God does is based on his nature. It's really important for us to understand. The church as a whole wouldn't have some of the doctrinal beliefs we have if we understood the nature of God. We wouldn't believe some of the things about God we believe if we understood that everything flowed from his nature, right? Then we can have a reference. That's the foundation we need to look at, is the nature of God, right? Everything is based on that, so we have to know what his nature is. Well, the essence of his nature, we've all come to the conclusion of, I hope, is love, right? The essence of God's nature is love, right? There are many attributes of God. He's just, he's kind, he's all these things, but the essence of God is love. And everything that he does is based on the essence of his nature, which is love. So we see that in 1 John 4, 7-8. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. So God is explaining to us that the essence of his nature is love, and if all of his plans flow from his nature, when we look at his creation for humanity, we understand that the reason he made humanity was because of love. And we have to understand that God's design for us was to be the object of his affection, right? God didn't make us because he needed to be loved. Do you understand? He didn't need us to worship him. He is love. So he made humanity as a way to express his love. So everything that God did was a way to express his love. So when we look at creation, we see that, right? We've hopefully we've gotten a revelation of this, but before the foundation of the world, he saw us. Have you guys, it says that in multiple places, that God saw us before creation. And then everything that he created was for us. Every single thing that he made with us in mind, right? So he saw you when he made what you love most. And he made that with us in mind. So he anticipated every want, need, and desire, and he made it before he made even Adam and Eve. It's fundamental for us to understand that. And when he finished with his creation, he said it was what? Not just good, very good. So he's describing what life is like with him on the earth, and he says it's very good. So what should the message of the church and every Christian be about God? Very good. Right? So what would the world look like if the only message they ever heard about God was that he's very good? Right? There would be no empty seat in any church ever if the only message that people ever heard was that God was good. There wouldn't be. There would not be any empty seat in any church if the only message that we preached was what God said about himself. Because he said, what I designed was very good. And he designed it for us. That should be a great source of encouragement for us. So he establishes himself as the source of life. So in 1 Corinthians 8:6, he says this, yet for us, there is only one God. Who's the us? All of creation. Every living thing, every living person. For us, there's only one God, the Father, who is the source of all things, and for whom we have life. And when he thinks about life, he thinks about abundance, because that's what life means. The word life literally is abundance. When you look at the root word for God's life, it's abundance. And one Lord, Jesus Christ, through and by whom are all things, and through and by whom we ourselves have our existence. And I had this overwhelming thought this morning when I was preparing about God's nature and his nature being love. And I thought, if God is love, then everything he does and everything he creates for love, for us, was done from love. So think about that. If God is love, everything he does out of a place of love. That would be something to really spend some time meditating on. Everything that he does out of love, because that's the only source he has. He's not changing, right? He's not love and wrathful at the same time. So we have to understand his nature. But I want us to understand one thing. When he created everything for us, and he established himself as the source, he also created us with needs that only he could meet. Can you agree with that? He created us with needs that only he could meet. Right? So he made us. He created us with physical, spiritual, and emotional needs, right? Does every human have those? Right? Well, he's the one who established them, and he created us with these needs that only he could meet. And there was a divine purpose to that. The divine purpose to that was that we would live in a relationship with him based on dependency and trust. So he's the source. Abide in me, and every need you have will be met through abiding in the source. That was his plan from the beginning. It's not a real hard plan. Abide in me, and I abide in you. So as our source, he created us with needs that only he could meet. And as our source, he designed us to live in an intimate relationship with him based on dependency and trust. So we're going to focus on God's unconditional love. And I want us to understand that one of the root issues, one of the root reasons we have God's unconditional love is to meet the needs that he gave us. See, the primary need that every human has is a need of value and worth. Can we agree with that? Every human being was created with a need for value and worth. And that can only be satisfied through unconditional love. Your basic need for value and love can only be satisfied through unconditional love. It's how God designed it. Luckily, he's the source of it. Right? So he says, if you stay connected to the source of infinite unconditional love, there'll never be a question about your value or worth. Does that make sense? So I gave you that picture that time about Adam, and he had the two lines, right? He had the inlet line that was connected to God, and God was his source. Then he had the outlet line. And after he received from God and he was filled to overflow, then whatever he had from God began to spill out on others. Right? Well, that's what it's supposed to be with love, right? We're supposed to be so filled with the love of God that it begins to overflow to other people, right? When you look at abundance, what's abundance? More than enough. So everything he gives us with enough for us and extra for other people so that they could get a seed to believe for God too. So when you look at how God designed it, he designed it so that we would find everything we need in him. And especially when it comes to our emotional needs. He's the source. He made us with emotional needs, but his intention was we'd only find them in him. But see what happened through the fall. Through the fall of man became disconnected from the source of love, the source of emotional needs. And now they had to look to an alternative source. And now we enter into a world that's run by or influenced by the enemy of God. And he has all kinds of great ideas for us to find substitutes, right? Do you think he has some ideas about what could be a substitute for what we're supposed to find from God? Are any of them for our good? Not one of them. Everything that he tries to get us to use as an alternative is not helping us. So he's come up with his own game plan because of separation from God. And his plan for us to find our value is now through people and things. That was the plan he came up with. For us to find the value that's only designed to be found through God. And now we're trying to find it through people and things. How's that working? Not so good. But see, he's so subtle. We've talked about this. The deception is so subtle. It's kind of like the frog in the water. Remember the story? If you try to throw a frog in hot water, he'll just jump right out. But if you put it in the cold water and turn it on, you could boil him because he won't jump out because he's comfortable. Well, that's what the enemy has done through this thing. We have these deceptions that we've grown up with that we don't even see are deceptions. They're just normal. And now we've become connected to a source that God never intended to be our source of value and worth. So I want to talk about women and men because we both have different sources we're looking to when God intended for it to be him. So ladies first. But I want us to see this cultural thing that we don't see maybe. So think about it. How many of you grew up watching Disney movies? Cinderella. Anybody see Cinderella? See, you've had these movies that have been going on for years and years and years and years and years. And there's this subtle seed that's being planted that we don't even understand. It's the cold water. Right? So you look at these movies, you look at these cartoons, you read these books, and there's this underlying theme that you see that you don't really even connect with. But there's always a damsel, right? And then there's also, who's the guy? He's the prince. He's the hero, right? So now, your whole life, you're starting to think, well, if I could just find Prince Charming, then I'll be okay. Then I can live happily ever after. Only if I find my Prince Charming can I live happily ever after. Well, what if you don't? No happily ever after? Is that what we're telling people? But see, it doesn't end with just the Disney movies. Right? Anybody ever see Officer and a Gentleman? Remember the scene with Richard Gere when he goes in and he bursts into the factory, right? And he grabs Deborah Winger and he carries her out as the shining armor, and all the women are crying and they're cheering, yay, she's rescued, a man did it. But here's the thing. It's so subtle, but what we're saying is your value is found not through God, but a man. Your value is found not through God, but a man. So now you're looking for someone to be your source who's not equipped to be your source. See, everyone in this room has amazing men in your life. Praise the Lord. But you know what? They are not the source of infinite, unconditional love. That's not a good place for an amen. But it's true. No man is the source of infinite, unconditional love. Yet subtly, we have generation after generation after generation of women who have grown up looking to a man to find their value, which is designed to be found from God. And if that's not enough, the enemy has also convinced you that your man is deciding your value based on how you look and what you do. Am I right? There's this root of this. The man's not telling you that. The man's not telling you that, but there's just this inerrant thing that we believed that keeps us trapped in things that God never designed. So now, not only are we connected to the wrong source, but now we're on a treadmill trying to produce something that you received as a gift, right? Because God's love is unconditional, but we're on the treadmill and we're trying to receive something and receive something and receive something because we think there's something we have to do to find value. I'll get to men. We got our own things, but we have to. Is it important to understand this? So we watched Little House on the Prairie, and there was one scene that just blew me away. The mom has 4 girls, and all she ever wanted to do was give her husband a boy. So she gets pregnant, and she's convinced it's a boy, and she's so thrilled. And all she could talk about is she's finally going to give her husband a boy, and it consumes her. Well, she goes back to the doctors and finds out she's not even pregnant. Well, now, what do I do? So now she continues to pretend she's pregnant for a month and a half because she believes that she tells her husband that she's not going to give him a boy, he's going to leave. Because that's the only value she has to her husband, is to produce something for him. And I thought, oh my gosh. See, it's just a movie, it's just a show, but there are aspects of that's happening all around us. And there are women right now that are being trapped in that, and they don't even have a source. You have a source. They don't have a source other than that. And they're living like that day in and day out and day in and day out, and they don't know there's an alternative. They don't know there's an alternative. See, now with men, it's different. We grew up looking at performance, right? So you grow up and you look at the cowboys on TV, and the ones with the white hat are the heroes, right? But it's always about what they do, right? The heroes are the best writers and the best shooters, right? So you're like, I got to be that guy. That guy never misses, man. He never falls off his horse, and he never misses. Right? And then you get to school and you start to look at the older kids and you see the ones that have the most attention are the ones that perform best. Am I right? It's the lettermen at school that have the girls on both arms. It's not the guys that don't perform well, it's the guys that perform well. Right? So for us, everything becomes about what we can do. So now we got the treadmill going already because it's already about works for us. So now we are finding our identity through things and not God, right? So what becomes your God? What becomes your source of value? Your career. Well, that's fine until you retire. But then what? You got to find another source. You got to find another source of value, because everything that we've been doing has been tied to a thing, something that produces something. It's quiet in here. But I'm a man, and I experience that. See, and it's a trap, because then you're only as good as your last performance. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. See, and then if you put all that in its place, and then you become a Christian, if you're not careful, now we take these rules given by God and we add them on top of it. So now you got to prove yourself by what you give, how much you show up, are you giving, right? And now religion adds these things on top of this already hard place to live, because somehow we think we have to do that to please God. And it's like Satan has something called value, and he casts it out in front of us. And right when you reach for it, he goes, and then he reaches for it again, and he pulls it out again. And he goes like that. And we could spend our whole lives, even as Christians, chasing after something that God gave us as a gift. But see, when you are connected to the source of life, when you're connected to the source of God, his love is unconditional. And that means it's not based on anything you do. Do you understand? It's not based on anything you do. That can set us free if we understand that God's love is not based on anything we do. No matter what you do, God loves you. It never changes. Never, ever, 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 ever changes. His love for you does not change. It's not based on performance. So we need to understand who our source is, because it takes the performance out of your relationship. And now, even when you make a mistake, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I didn't get it right. I got to fix my relationships, because it does affect your horizontal relationships, but my relationship with God has not changed. That's foundational for us to understand, that nothing you do affects God's love for you. And when we get to this place where we understand the source of our love, we become unstoppable. Because nothing in culture can change us. Nothing can change our value if we understand who the source of our value is. Are you with me? This is foundational. We have to understand that God and God alone is the source of our value and our worth. And when we get to the place where we get established in that, now we can begin to help other people. Right? You ever get on the plane with a kid? Remember? And they would always say, do what? Put your own mask on first, and then help them. Right? We have to put our own love, value, purpose mask on first, and then help other people. But until we get established, how do we help somebody else? So what I want to do is I want us to look at how God intended for us to receive this love. See, in Ephesians 3:14-19, it tells us this. For this reason, I bow my knees to the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, from whom the whole family in heaven and on earth is named, that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might through his Spirit in the inner man. Now listen, that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you be rooted and grounded in love. See, that's God's plan, that we be rooted and grounded in love, which means you're rooted and grounded to the source of unconditional love. And that we may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the width, length, depth, and height, and to know the love of Christ, which passes knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. So to be filled with all the fullness of God is to be filled with the love of God, to be grounded in the love of God. So the question is, does God have a way for us to do that? How do we get grounded in the love of God? How do we get established? Because when it talks about being established, it's talking about your heart. Everything flows out of your heart. So how do you establish your heart on receiving this unconditional love of God? Well, you have to understand what the Bible says about God's love for you. So 1 John 4:9 says this, "In this the love of God was manifested," and the word manifested just simply means made known. So if you want to make a note above that, "In this the love of God was made known toward us, that God has sent his only begotten Son into the world that we might live through him." So God has revealed his love to you by sending his Son, that your relationship with him can be restored. See, so one of the ways that you have an established heart in love is to focus on what God did. Right? To focus on what God did. The reason he sent Jesus was because of his love for you and for me. And do you realize if you were the only one on the planet, he would have sent Jesus? Because of his love. So spending time thinking about that, focusing your heart and attention on those things will begin to establish your heart in love. Like when you look at a cross, the nails there were placed for punishment, not to keep him on it. Do you understand? That was part of Roman's punishment. Do you realize that's not what held him to the cross? It was his love for you that held him to the cross. It wasn't the nails. So spending time thinking about that, spending time thanking him as you think about that will establish your heart in love. See, this is I'm trying to give us something practical, right? We have to move from understanding to experiencing, and this is how you do it, right? You have to engage with God to receive his love, and this is one of the ways you do it. Is you focus your attention, you open your heart to this, and you see it, and you meditate on it, and you thank him for it in the process. Well, see, here's the second thing. We talked about this earlier. That everything God created, he created with us in mind. So 2 Timothy 1:9 says, "Who has saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given to us in Christ before time began." So if you can begin to understand that everything that God did, he did with you in mind. So everything God made, he made with you in mind. So what if we made a practice of acknowledging that? What if every time you walked out into your garden and you saw a rose, you said, "Thank you, God. You made this because you love me." Is there enough stuff in your yard alone that could get you established in love if we just made the decision to do it, if we just understood? Right? You could do that with everything. Everything he made for you. So you could do that while you eat, right? Every time you eat, whatever you eat, if you eat a vegetable, did it come from God? Was it because of his love? Every Brussels sprout was made for you because he loves you. Every avocado, every chicken, every beef, whatever it is in your diet, God made it for you. And we could get to a place where we look at those things and go, "Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you." And how does that affect our heart when we learn to be grateful? See, not only does this establish our heart in love and value, but it establishes our heart in gratitude. And you know what? Grateful people are happy people. So that's really good. That's a double win right there. So think about that. So everything that he created with you in mind, and we can do that. But it's a choice. We could take everything. If you eat ice cream, I love ice cream. I guess I love everything sweet. I got to be careful. But man, you could sit there with that ice cream if you like ice cream and go, praise you, Lord. I love you, Jesus. I'm so thankful you made this for me. Right? It started with a cow, but he had a plan for that cow. That ended up being ice cream for me. Right? So whatever it is, a lot of you guys have tractors, right? You could get on your tractor and say, you know what, Lord, you knew I didn't want to use a mule for this. So you made the raw materials and you gave somebody the idea to make a tractor for me. And you could ride your tractor just getting established in the love of God, right? Just praising the Lord while you're doing your work. But it's a choice. And that was his plan for us. He wants us to see his goodness in everything that he made, and he wants us to understand that he made it for us. But he did this for a purpose. Right? We talked about this before. God gave us love for us, and then for who else? Others. Right? Everything God gives, he gives us in excess, right? For others. Right? Because we are the ones who represent him on the earth. Nobody's looking around and seeing a physical God on the earth. You understand that? Because God doesn't have a body. So he established a body on the earth called the church so that he could be seen through us. So that we could be his perfect expression of love to a lost and dying world. So he made a way for us to be filled with the love of God so that everywhere we go, it could spill out onto other people. And they can experience unconditional love also. Right? Not conditions. Not like I love you if you'll do this. Right? If you'll stop doing that and start doing this, then maybe we'll talk about love. That's not God's love. His love is unconditional, and we need to live that way also, to the best of our ability. Now understand, our role is not to be someone's source. Our role is to be a supplement to what God is doing. Right? We're the supplement. Right? So we could supplement, we could point people to Jesus, we could help people get established by coming alongside and teaching them who Jesus is. So it says this in 1 John 4:7. So loving one another is the evidence that we know the Father. Loving one another is the evidence that we know the Father. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves God is born of God. And he who does not love does not know God, because God is love. So one of the evidences that we know God is that we love people unconditionally. That we love people unconditionally. That's how they see that we know God. And love is also revealed through the actions of a transformed heart. So I won't take the time to go through this, but go through, I printed out Corinthians 13, 4-7 in the Message, because it breaks things out in more practical steps. So it talks about love never giving up. Love caring more for others than for self. That love keeps no score of the sins of others, right? Love keeps no record of wrongs, right? These are all aspects of unconditional love. So loving like Jesus is also the evidence that we're his disciples. A new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you. That you also love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. But the key statement there is, as I have loved you. That's the part we have to understand. As I have loved you. That's the main thing. When he says it's a new commandment, see, they were loving people before, but it was totally conditional. on performance. And now Jesus is establishing a new covenant of love, and he says, this kind of love loves the way I love. And then they describe it for us in John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, that they lay down their life for one's friend. So he described what biblical love is. Love is being willing to lay down your life, your needs, your desires for the sake of someone else. It also talks about the fact that love fulfills the law. I won't take the time to teach this because we'll be here really long. But if you look at what Jesus is telling these Pharisees with their 613 laws, they come to him and try to trap him. What's the greatest laws? Like he's going to pick 600. And Jesus says, there's just two. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Because if you look at the 10 commandments, there's 4 commandments that talk about the relationship between you and God, and then there's 6 that talk about the relationship between you and another person. And love fixes all those. Right? When you love God, you won't have an idol. Right? Even your spouse. When you love others, you'll treat them with unconditional love, right? So Jesus is telling us this love, this transformed life, it takes care of the law. Do you understand? There's no more need for the 613 laws because if you just do these 2, everything will be right in your life. But love is also designed to compel us to share the good news. To share the good news. So 2 Corinthians 5:14 says, for the love of Christ compels us, because we judge this, that if one died for all, then all died, and he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and rose again. See, Paul is helping us understand that Jesus died the death that we should have died so that we could live the life that God intended for us to live. And he's saying once we experience that, then we're compelled to share it with other people. So in 2 Corinthians 5:18, it says, now all things are of God, who has reconciled us to himself through Jesus Christ and has given us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, that God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, not imputing their trespasses to them, and has committed to us the word of reconciliation. So what God is wanting us to know is that through Jesus, he has already made a way for everyone to come to the Father. And do you realize it's not conditional? Do you realize he's not looking at people's lifestyle and saying, not you. You don't qualify. I don't like where you live. I don't like how you dress. I don't like who you love. That's what religion is teaching, but that's not what God is saying. See, God is saying that the thing that separated man from God is what? Sin. What happened with sin? It was placed upon Jesus. The wrath of God was placed upon Jesus so that every person could be free. Right? All of God's wrath was poured upon Jesus on the cross, so there could be no more wrath toward man. If wrath was satisfied, was it satisfied? How could there be more if Jesus was satisfied? There is no more. He's made a way for every person to be reconciled to God, and our message is, I got good news for you. Jesus loves you. He's already made a way for you to be in a relationship with him, and it's all based on faith, not performance. Right? All you have to do is enter into a relationship with him, and as you do that, then things will change. As you grow in love with him, your heart will be transformed, and then all the things that you were doing that was harmful to you will change. So it's all about the love of God. So he gave us this great gift called love so that we could be established in our value and worth and show the world how good God is. Because it was his goodness, it was his love that made him stay on the cross so we could be reconciled back to man. What a plan. What an awesome God. That he would make a way for us to live and be established in love, and then help other people get established in love. So you don't have to live like this every day, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. That was never God's design. His design is perfect love casts out fear. That's his design for us, that we would be established moment by moment by moment by moment in his love, because we're not doing anything for performance. We're doing it because we want to love and bless other people. God's not up there with checks going, oh, good job, son. Good job, son. Oh, I'm going to erase that one. I didn't like the way you pronounced that when you said it. His love is perfect for you. His heart is perfect for you. And it's the same for every person. He just wants us to gather a huge family of people to receive the love of a perfect Father.